Parents told me not to come home because I was an embarrassment. All to impress my sister's boyfriend. What they didn't know. He worked for me. My name is Darren. I'm 30, live about 40 minutes outside Seattle and spend my weekdays running the operations branch of a renewable tech startup I co-founded 8 years ago. I'm not flashy. I don't post my vacations on social media. I don't care about luxury watches or cars that go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. But I've built something real, something mine. I have a decent house, a rescue dog named Clem, and a circle of close friends who don't ask me to prove my worth. My family, on the other hand, never saw me the same way. My older sister Lena was the sun our parents orbited around. Every family photo has her center stage, graduation cap, birthday cakes, a new car at 17. And me? Usually off to the side, half out of frame, barely noticed unless something broke and needed fixing. If Lena sneezed, they made tea. If I got a fever, I was told to sweat it out. I thought maybe that would change as we got older. Spoiler, it didn't. 2 years ago, just weeks before my mother's birthday, I called home like I always did. I'd already booked my flight. Took time off. Planned to be there early to help set up the decorations and prep the backyard. That's when Dad answered. At first, his tone was weird, tight, like he was weighing each word. Then he said it. Maybe don't come this year, Darren. I actually laughed, thinking it was a joke. What, you afraid I'll mess up the frosting again? It's not that, he said. Lena's bringing her boyfriend this year. He's a professional, manages a team, speaks well, you know, and your job, well, it's hard to explain to people. It's not something tangible. I was speechless. Then came the hammer. You showing up might just make things awkward. If you insist on coming, then don't call me your father. I stood frozen in my apartment, phone pressed to my ear, heartbeat thudding. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That wasn't a bad joke. That was a man I called family telling me my existence made him uncomfortable. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I hung up. And then, in complete silence, I logged into my banking app. You see, for over 2 years I'd been paying all my parents' utilities, electricity, water, internet. Every month, like clockwork, for $100 straight from my account. Why? Because 2 years prior, Mom called, teary-eyed, saying bills had spiked and they were struggling. I agreed to help just for a few months. No one ever brought it up again. The bills just kept coming. I never got a thank you. Never even got acknowledgement. But I kept paying. Because they were my parents. Because that's what good sons do. That night after that call, I totaled everything I'd sent them. $9,842.17. Almost 10 grand. In silence. While they praised Lena for showing up with a polished boyfriend and a pretty dress. I canceled everything that night. Electricity. Water. Internet. One by one. Not out of pettiness. Out of self-preservation. A week later, Mom texted. Not to ask how I was. Not to apologize. Internet's down. Can you take care of it? I didn't reply. The next day, Dad called. Left a voicemail. Power's out. Bill wasn't paid. What's going on? Still, no acknowledgement. No remorse. Just confusion that their human safety net had stopped cushioning the fall. And so, I stayed silent. As the birthday came and went, I stayed in my apartment, sipping coffee gone cold, letting their messages pile up unanswered. But it wasn't over. Because the night of that birthday, as the lights flickered out during dinner, as guests murmured and panic set in, they called again. Over and over. Mom. Dad. Lena. And then the messages turned cruel. You embarrassed your mother. You ruined Lena's night. People like you shouldn't show up on special days. I didn't reply. But someone else did. And that's when everything flipped. Let me rewind to the person who replied to their cruelty, Eli. Eli Pearson. My co-founder. My best friend. My business partner since college. And, as fate would have it, Lena's new boyfriend's boss. Yeah. You heard that right. Turns out Lena's golden boy, the one my family was rolling out the red carpet for, was my mid-level product manager. He'd started just under a year ago, transferred from a partner firm. Kept to himself, did decent work. Nothing groundbreaking, but solid. I'd met him once, briefly, when Eli brought him into a budget sink. I remember thinking he was polished, too rehearsed. But I never thought to connect him to her. So when Eli saw Lena's birthday post on Instagram, her smiling next to the guy we knew only as Grant Hughes, he nearly choked on his iced coffee. Is that your sister? He texted. Yep. And that's Grant? Like? Our Grant? The one we just promoted to team lead. Apparently. We had ourselves a soap opera. I wasn't going to say anything. Let the situation rot on its own. But Eli? Eli's not built that way. He's chaos in a Patagonia vest. The next day, he walked into our Monday stand-up meeting like it was opening night at a Broadway show. Everyone in the room could sense something was up. He gave updates. Then, casually said, "By the way, Grant, heard you're dating the boss's sister." Small world. Silence. Grant turned pale. Like, fresh printer paper pail. I didn't know she was related, he stammered. I stayed silent, watching him squirm. It wasn't about revenge. It was about watching someone experience even a fraction of what I'd been made to swallow. Well, Eli said with a grin, she's a gem. Just maybe don't bring her to Darren's parents' place unless you're into blackout dinners. The jab landed. Everyone laughed nervously. Grant looked like he wanted to vanish into the industrial carpet. That night he called me. I didn't know, man, about the situation. Your parents, Lena, I just met her at a conference and one thing led to another. You owe me nothing, I said. But if you're serious about her, maybe you should get the full story. He paused. They said you didn't want to be around them, that you ghosted everyone. Of course they did. I told him the truth. Not the angry version. Not the edited highlights. Just the facts. The utilities. The rejection. The erasure. He listened. Asked questions. Then said, I think I need to rethink some things. 2 days later, Lena showed up at my office. Uninvited. She walked in like she owned the place. Heels clicking, smile fixed. Can we talk? I waved Eli out of the room. She didn't waste time. You told him lies. I told him the truth. You just didn't like how it sounded. She scoffed. You're bitter. You always have been. That's why Dad never let you speak at family dinners. That one hurt. More than I wanted it to. But I didn't flinch. You and Dad wanted a story that made sense to you, where I was the failure and you were the hero. Now that you're dating someone who actually works for me, that story's unraveling. She stood, arms crossed. You know what your problem is? You think not saying anything makes you noble. But silence doesn't make you strong. No, I replied, standing too. But sometimes it's the only thing you have when no one wants to hear you. She stormed out. Eli walked in moments later, holding 2 coffees like the sitcom sidekick he always is. She left tire tracks on your carpet. Should we frame it? We laughed. But behind the laughter was the beginning of something deeper. Not revenge. Not redemption. Just a reckoning. The fallout from Lena's storm-out barely had time to cool before the universe decided to add another twist to this already absurd tale. Grant didn't just disappear into awkward oblivion like I expected. No, he came to my office the next day, knocked twice, poked his head in like a nervous intern, and asked if we could talk. Alone. We sat across from each other. He with a fidgeting pen, me with an iced coffee and zero expectations. I didn't come to defend her, he began, voice low. I came to ask, do you want me to resign? That threw me. He looked up, eyes clearer than I expected. I don't want to make things weird around here, but I also don't want to pretend I didn't walk into this company blind to who you were. I leaned back, steepling my fingers. Let me ask you something, Grant. Do you like Lena? I do. Do you know her? He hesitated. I thought I did. That's your answer. He nodded slowly, understanding what I wasn't saying. I never meant to cause friction. This job matters to me. And it should. You earned it. I told him. Your personal life is yours. But if you ever let it bleed into our work again, we'll have another conversation. And that one won't be as polite. He left with a quiet thank you, and I was left staring at the door, wondering when exactly I'd become the adult in every room. The next weekend, Lena called. I didn't answer. She texted. Family dinner Sunday. Mom wants you there. I stared at the message for a long time. Was it a trap? Another excuse to humiliate me? Or was this an olive branch carved out of guilt? I showed up, dressed casual. No airs, just curiosity. Mom opened the door like she hadn't ghosted me for months. Darren, she said, voice trembling. You look well. Inside, the usual crowd was there. Lena, Dad, even a couple aunts who still thought I was working with computers or something. Dinner was polite. Too polite. Everyone danced around me like I was a grenade. Then, halfway through dessert, Dad cleared his throat. I want to apologize, he said. I should have never told you not to come. It wasn't right. My fork paused midair. I thought I was protecting your sister. I thought you were being petty. But I see now that I didn't see you clearly. And that's on me. The table went silent. Lena wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom blinked fast. Even Grant, who had the gall to attend, shifted uncomfortably. Okay, I said quietly. That's it? Dad asked. What do you want? Tears? A toast? He sighed. I want my son back. I set my fork down. You never lost me. You just stopped looking. I left after that. Quietly. No scene. Just picked up my keys and left. That night I found a voicemail from Lena. You're still so dramatic. Always have to be the bigger person. Whatever. I hope this is enough for you now. It wasn't an apology. It was a tantrum with better vocabulary. And I didn't respond. Because the truth is, the people who try to dim your light are the ones afraid of their own shadows. I wasn't bitter anymore. I was just done. About 3 weeks after that awkward family dinner, our company had its annual retreat, an off-site weekend filled with trust falls, brainstorming sessions, and too many mores. We hosted it in the Cascades, nestled between pine trees and overpriced cabins. Normally, it's a highlight of the year. This time, it was a minefield. Because Grant was coming. And Lena decided to tag along. Technically, we allow employees to bring guests to the final day mixer. It's a low-stakes gathering, bonfire, catered dinner, live acoustic music. But never in my life had I expected my sister to roll up arm in arm with the guy she was now awkwardly dating, who also worked for me, right after our family had imploded. When I saw her, my heart didn't sink. It just went cold. Like the air got thinner. She looked around like she was on stage, smiling too big, waving at people like this was her firm and she'd brokered the venue herself. Grant looked sheepish. You could tell he hadn't expected her to actually show. I didn't approach them. I mingled, talked shop, answered questions from new hires, and laughed when someone roasted the hotel Wi-Fi. I even clinked a glass with Eli, who watched the situation unfold with an amused smirk. Bet you $5 she tries to give a toast, he whispered. You're on, I replied. Then came the inevitable. Dinner was winding down. Our head of HR stood up to give closing remarks. As the applause faded, Lena stood up, holding a wine glass like she was the MC of a fundraiser. I just want to say, she began, how proud I am of the incredible work you all do here. Darren has really built something beautiful. The crowd turned. I froze. Watching my brother from afar has been humbling, she said. Even if we don't always see eye to eye, I'm grateful for his leadership. And his forgiveness. Forgiveness? I hadn't given her that. Not once. Not verbally. Not emotionally. And here she was, fabricating it for an audience. Polite applause rippled through the room. I forced a smile. But inside, a fuse was burning. After the event, she cornered me near the drink table. I was being nice, she said, leaning in. That was me extending an olive branch. You don't get to rewrite our story just because people are watching, I said. You don't get to cast yourself as the supportive sibling when you haven't apologized for anything. She blinked. You're seriously still on this? You think because you stood up with a glass of Pinot and offered a speech that it wipes the slate? That's not how this works, Lena. Then what do you want? She asked, her tone hardening. Nothing, I said, smiling for a passing in turn. That's the point. I want nothing from you. And that's what you hate? Because for once I'm not begging for a seat at the table, you're scrambling to stay in the room. She turned on her heel and walked off. Grant trailed behind her, not saying a word. The next day she unfollowed me on everything. Instagram, LinkedIn, even Spotify. I laughed. Because for the first time in a long time I didn't feel like the forgotten son, or the bitter sibling, or the ghost they only remembered when something needed fixing. I felt like a man who had finally outgrown the version of himself they never bothered to know. Part 5, Midnight. I didn't hear from Lena for almost 2 months after the retreat. Not a message. Not a like. Not even one of her backhanded inspirational quote stories that she loved to post. Radio silence. I thought maybe that meant the storm had passed. It hadn't. One afternoon, while reviewing a pitch deck for a new investor, I got a call from my mother. I stared at it for a solid minute before answering. Darren, she said, without greeting. You need to fix this. I blinked. Fix what? Lena. She's devastated. She says you're being cruel. I set my laptop aside. She fabricated a narrative in front of my team. She hasn't apologized. And I haven't spoken to her since. That's not cruelty. That's distance. She's your sister, Mom hissed. Family means you forgive. And what does family mean for me? I asked. Because I've spent 30 years being your plan B. The emergency contact when Lena flaked out. The ghost you blamed when something went wrong. She fell silent. Then quieter. This isn't who we raised you to be. No, I said. It's who I became when I realized I didn't owe my loyalty to people who never gave me respect. Click. She hung up. And I sat there, strangely calm. Later that week, I got a visit. In person. My dad. He stood on my porch, hands jammed in the pockets of his windbreaker like a kid waiting to be picked last in gym class. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. I came to talk, he said. You've got 3 minutes. He looked me dead in the eye. I don't understand you anymore. But I respect what you've built. Even if it took all this to see it. That caught me off guard. Because my dad never respected much that wasn't a handshake and a high school trophy. I can't fix your sister, he continued. but I want to start fixing this. I didn't know what to say. I didn't hug him. Didn't cry. But I nodded. That was enough. We went for coffee. Talked about work, the market, the Mariners' terrible pitching rotation. For a moment, we weren't father and estranged son. We were just two men trying not to repeat history. But the peace didn't last long. That Sunday, Lena posted a blog entry titled Betrayal by Blood. She wrote about me. Not directly, but enough that anyone who knew us would know. She painted herself as a loving sister discarded by a bitter brother who let money and ego warp his heart. It went semi-viral. Friends sent it to me. Colleagues DM'd me with awkward emojis. And still, I didn't respond. Not publicly. Not privately. Because I wasn't in the business of defending myself to people who only listened when I was hurting. But Grant? He did respond. 3 days later, he emailed me his resignation. I can't keep pretending this relationship hasn't affected my integrity at work, he wrote. I'm sorry for everything. Not just what you saw, but what you never should have had to experience. I accepted it. I didn't hate him. I just didn't trust him anymore. And trust was currency. In the end, Lena lost a relationship. I lost a few illusions. And for the first time, I didn't feel bad about either. It's funny how silence can stretch into something almost comfortable, how absence stops feeling like punishment and starts to resemble peace. After Grant resigned and Lena's blog post made its round of internet sympathy circuits, the dust began to settle. No one called. No one wrote. Even my mother, once the torchbearer of family guilt, stopped trying to pull me back into the fold. And I didn't miss it. There's something freeing about no longer anticipating disappointment. When the door finally closes, you stop flinching every time someone walks past it. I focused on work. We were launching a new initiative on eco-sustainable logistics, and the pressure was real, but it was a good kind of pressure. The kind that fills your lungs instead of crushing them. Eli and I started hosting Thursday brainstorming nights that ended in takeout and terrible movies. My apartment began to feel like a home again, not just a bunker. Meanwhile, Lena doubled down on her brand. Influencer vibes. Blog posts titled Choosing Yourself Even When They Hate You For It. Subtweets that dripped with vague barbs. And then, like a candle that runs out of wax, she fizzled out. One day, I logged on and her blog was gone. All her posts archived. Her social media scrubbed. Rumors swirled, maybe a breakdown, maybe a rebrand, maybe just burnout. I didn't ask. Because by then, I realized that not every chapter gets closure. Some just end. My dad still called once every few weeks. We didn't talk about Lena. We talked about books, dogs, weather, baseball. He never apologized again, and I never asked him to. I didn't need an encore of the past, I needed consistency. And he gave me that in his own quiet, cautious way. Then, out of nowhere, I got a letter. Handwritten. From Grant. He was moving across the country. Got a new job. Wanted to thank me for the chance I gave him and for not torching him when things got messy. Said he and Lena weren't together anymore. Said he hoped I found happiness, not the Instagram kind, but the kind that lasts through quiet Sundays and grocery runs. I folded the letter and tucked it into the back of my desk drawer. Not forgiveness. Not friendship. But peace. One night, I hosted a small dinner, just a few friends, a homemade lasagna, and music that didn't try too hard. Somewhere between pouring wine and arguing over whether pineapple belongs on pizza, it does, by the way, I caught myself laughing. Not polite chuckling. Actual, full-belly, shoulders-shaking laughter. And I realized something. I hadn't thought about them in days. Not out of spite. Not from anger. But because my life had filled in the space they left behind. They didn't shrink. I just grew. Update. It's been a full year since Lena stood up at that retreat and tried to narrate a version of our story that never existed. A year since my mother's guilt calls stopped, since Grant quietly left and my father decided he still wanted a son after all. And here's the truth. I am more myself now than I've ever been. I've spent most of my life minimizing myself so others could feel tall. Speaking less so they could speak louder. Working harder while being noticed less. And all of it, the restraint, the compromise, the silence, was interpreted as weakness. But now I've rewritten the blueprint. I don't owe my family the smaller version of me they were comfortable with. I don't owe them edited gratitude or forced affection just because we share a last name. What I owe is to myself, truth, space, and the joy of being surrounded by people who see me, not just use me. The company's thriving. Our new hire replaced Grant's role with quiet grace, and the team is more cohesive than ever. I promoted 2 women from within, both rock stars, both overlooked for too long. We don't do legacy hiring anymore. We do earn presence. My dad still shows up sometimes, mostly on Sundays, coffee in hand, stories about old baseball games and retirement plans. We don't talk about the past. Not because it's off limits, but because we've both accepted that revisiting it won't change the present. Lena? She's vanished from my radar. No more blog posts. No messages. Last I heard, she moved across state lines and started consulting. I don't wish her harm. I just don't wish her into my life anymore. There's a difference. And me? I've started writing. Not for an audience. Just for myself. Pages and pages of thoughts, fiction, memories, some sharp, some soft. I even started a folder titled The Book They'll Never Read. In it I write about the versions of me my family never met, the artist, the leader, the man who laughed so hard at lasagna night he dropped an entire glass of wine. Healing didn't come in fireworks. It came in small things. Saying no without guilt. Saying yes to myself. Letting go of the need to prove anything. People always ask if I've forgiven them. If I've moved on. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't something I owe anyone. It's a quiet decision to stop letting someone else's shadow fall over your sunrise. And yes, I've moved on. I've moved forward. So to anyone out there holding their breath, waiting for someone to see your worth, stop waiting. You are not a draft waiting for edits. You are a finished story. And the people who want you small? They don't belong in your epilogue. If you were in Darren's place, what would you have done? And more importantly, what would you have written about yourself? Drop it in the comments. Someone out there might be writing their next chapter too. Hope you enjoyed this story as much as I do. Help this small channel grow by hitting that like button, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. Every bit of support means the world. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.